Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and today I'm going to bring you something slightly different. So today I'm going to bring you a review of this thing, the Sherman Jumbo, or if you prefer the M4A3E2, which is one of two Tier 6 American medium tanks. And a question you get asked, a question that crops up an awful lot is, should I pick this or its competitor, the Easy 8, when trying to decide what Tier 6 American medium tank to play. And I'm hopefully going to try and address that a little bit and possibly answer it, but we'll see how it goes. So I'm just going to do a quick run through of the stats in the garage of this thing. Then we'll have a quick look at the armour scheme. I'll show you a replay or two, and then I'll just give you a quick summation at the end. So what do you get with this? Well, you get an average wedge of hit points. I mean, 750 odd hit points is about average for a Tier 6 medium, and depending on which turret you use, and they are both viable options for reasons that I'll get onto, depending on which turret you use, you either get, I think it's 710, 720, you get 760 with the top turret, and no, don't want to purchase it, 760 with the top turret, and about 720, 710 with the stock turret. So that's kind of average. You've got that sort of 520 horsepower engine, which again is about typical for a medium tank, although it does weigh quite a lot. I mean, what someone has done to create this machine is take basically an Easy 8 and weld a load of armour to the front. So this thing has a bit of weight, and its speed limit is not the best. It's got a speed limit of 35 kilometers an hour, and that is with, let me just check, yes, that is with the upgraded suspension. So you're not exactly going to be setting the world alight with how fast you are. The traverse speed is 32, which is not great for a medium tank, but it's on the low side. Hull armour, well, you can see 101 at the front, and it's sloped. So you get an effective line of sight thickness of like 130 or something like that, which is pretty good, plus any other angling you want to give it. 76 at the sides, 38 at the rear. And the turret, well, the turret I've got, 76, 50, 50. But I'll come back to that later anyway. As for the gun selection, well, you've got a choice of guns, and the one I've got equipped, it's the same as the Easy 8, the M4A3E2 76mm gun. You know, it's kind of anemic, average damage, but it's not bad, and I'll show you all the guns on this thing. It's got a good rate of fire. So, we've got the 75mm gun M3. Put the howitzer down here, the M1A1 76mm gun, the M1A2 76mm gun. So this is the stock gun, and this is the gun you get on the Sherman. And if you've got any sense at all, you will never ever have to use this gun, because you will already have unlocked it, you will already have unlocked some of the other guns. So from the Sherman, if you've got any sense, you'll already have these two guns unlocked. This is the howitzer and the M1A1 76mm gun, which is the top gun on the Sherman. And you can mount one of these straight off the bat. The stock suspension has a reasonably generous load limit, so you can mount one of these. Whichever gun you choose is your preference. Personally, I prefer the M1A1, but you know, as I say, it's a matter of preference. The 105mm howitzer is a Tier 5 105mm howitzer. I mean, they're all very similar. I'm not going to go through it in detail. You should know what to expect by that if you've used them before, and if you haven't, give them a go. And the M1A2, the M1A1, this is your standard American Tier 6 76mm gun. Not particularly accurate, okay aim time, penetration's alright, damage is a bit weedy, good rate of fire. And the M1A2 is just an upgrade of that. It's exactly the same in every respect, except that it's slightly more accurate and it gets a higher rate of fire. So huzzah. So what is the main difference between this and its competitor? Well, the main difference, the configuration I've chosen, the main difference is that this gets 101mm of frontal hull armour, but it gets a worse power to weight ratio, 15, which is it's on the low side for a medium tank. It's not appalling, but it's definitely on the low side. And but the speed limit is noticeably less. So this thing, it's slightly more ponderous, but you get some armour. That's the trade-off. And frankly, it plays a little bit more like a heavy tank, in all honesty. And you'll probably have more success if you play it like a heavy tank. So what crew skills do you want? Well, it's basically a heavy tank in disguise. Repairs on your crew. You can see I've got Mentor on my commander, which I'll probably swap out for Sixth Sense when it hits 100% and plus a bit, because I do it for credits. And I'm currently training up Safe Stowage on the loader, because Safe Stowage is always good to have. What equipment should you take? Well, don't pay too much attention to the equipment I've got, because the view range on this thing is okay, but nothing special. And the way you will use it, it's not a long-range sniping tank or a scout. I mean, so the equipment I would probably go for if I were going to keep this would be a tank gun rammer to get more DPM, because it's a DPM gun anyway. I would probably get you must be able to fit it. Right, there we go. Vertical stabilizer. The American thing is that they can get access to vertical stabilizers at a lower tier than anyone else. So I would give it a vertical stabilizer for better firing on the move. And with my other option, well, I leave it up to you. You could give it coated optics, though I probably wouldn't bother. You might want to give it a spall liner, perhaps, because I find one of the main problems you have with heavily armoured tanks is eventually people just throw HE at you if they can't do anything else, and they'll eventually whittle you down. I haven't noticed any particular ammo rack problems. You could go for improved vents. Can it take a... Oh, and you could, if you wanted, go for an enhanced gun laying drive, because the aim time's okay, it's nothing special. And a toolbox wouldn't be a terrible idea. So it's kind of up to you what you want to give it. So as I say, you basically use this a little bit like a heavy tank. I'll give you my overall opinion on it later on, but why else might you want to use it? Well, if we look at the research tree, you can see that if you're coming along here, along the kind of medium line, at the M3 Lee, the line splits into the Sherman and the T1 Heavy. And so we're taking the Sherman, because we're going to these mediums, take the Sherman, then it splits into the Easy 8 and the Jumbo. The Sherman goes off into the American medium line. The Jumbo has a choice. You can either split off up into the American medium line, or you can come down into the American heavy line, skipping the T1 and the M6 if you so wish. I'm going to get back to that at the end. So basically, the reason to choose it over the Easy 8 perhaps would be that you don't want to play the T1 Heavy or the M6, but you do want to play the American Heavy line, so you go via the Jumbo. Or perhaps you just want to give it a go, although a warning, the rest of the American medium line has a playstyle much more akin to that of the Easy 8 than the Jumbo. The Jumbo's a bit different. So if you're planning to just grind down the American medium line, personally I would recommend the Easy 8. And I should have the caveat here, the Easy 8 is my preferred of the two. I think the Easy 8 is just better. Okay? Caveat there. Right, so having waffled on and said all that, I think it's worth showing you the armour scheme. Okay, so to look at the armour scheme. So this is the Jumbo here, this is a program called Tank Inspector. And I'm just going to have a quick look at the various armour zones. So first, I am actually going to switch down to the stock turret. Whatever gun. There we go. So, the stock turret on this tank is a viable choice. And if you pick it, what you get is better turret armour, essentially. You don't get quite the health pool, but you get better turret armour. So, let's bring up some armour schemes and see what we've got. So from the sides, on the hull, you've got this 76 odd millimeters of armour, pish. and from the rear, you're going to take damage. From the front, however, is where it's interesting. So on the hull, what would normally be considered the lower plate is actually, it has a raw thickness of 139, and depending on where you shoot, the effective thickness can be up to 170, 175 millimeters. So actually, this is not a good place to shoot on the Jumbo. Don't aim for the lower plate. I mean, if you try and aim for what you would think is the lower plate, it has an equivalent thickness of almost 300 millimeters. This is insane. So yeah, don't shoot at the lower plate on this machine. And if you have a look at the upper plate, then you've got this 102 millimeters. But if we look at it pretty much front on, that 102 effectively hovers, depending on exactly where you shoot, tends to hover around 135 to 150 odd. So this is actually quite well armoured from the front on the hull. What about the turret? Well, this is the stock turret, as I say, and it's got 152 millimeters, ignoring the gun mantlet. I mean, even the supposed weak spot, the commander's hatch, is 152. Front, sides, and rear. So the stock turret on this thing is an incredibly tough little piece of metal. And what about the gun mantle? Well, the gun mantle is... Alright, so right around the gun, you've just got the gun mantle itself, which on its own is 178 millimeters of spaced armour. But right around the gun itself, there's nothing behind it. Come out to the edge of the gun mantle, and suddenly you have 178 millimeters of spaced armour over the top of that 152 millimeters, giving you an equivalent thickness of 332 millimeters. What I'm getting at is that this stock turret is a very viable option, and if you notice that your opponent has the stock turret and you shoot at the front of it, you are doing it wrong. You're just doing it wrong. It's armoured like Fort Knox. However, if you go with the stock turret, you are limited to one of three guns. You have the 75mm gun M3, which you will not use because it was awful on the Sherman and it's even worse on this, which gives you a choice between the howitzer and the... let's just turn the armour zones off. It gives you a choice between the howitzer and the M1A1. So there's the howitzer, derpy little thing, and this is what a lot of people choose, and this is especially what people choose given that it used to be what people chose a lot before heat ammo got nerfed. It used to have penetration of about 150 with heat ammo and like 350 damage, which made it really, really good. But after the heat ammo nerf, the heat ammo's penetration is hovering around the 100 and something mark, not great. And the HE, it's okay, but I just don't get on with howitzers as a general rule. So the gun I used was the M1A1. Fine. But it's not very accurate. And it doesn't, well, the M1A2, the upgraded gun, has better accuracy and a faster rate of fire. I mean, the rate of fire on this isn't bad, but considering your really low alpha damage, it's not great. So what's your other option? Well, your other option is to give it the top turret. This has the effect of increasing your total health up to 760, but the armour takes a hit. Now this is where it gets interesting. So, from the side, well, let's bring back the armour schemes. Okay, from the rear and the sides, the armour is now 51mm. Okay? From the front, it's 76, but it's only really 76 under the gun. Right under here, it's 76 and, close as damn it, flat. The commander's hatch is mostly 76, but rounded, so you get an equivalent thickness of slightly more. Above the gun, 76, but sloped back, giving you an equivalent thickness of 147. To the sides, well, this counts as side armour. Even with a bit of sloping, some people are gonna penetrate you, pretty much. And the gun mantlet is the same. And what I find, or what I have found, is that if you are in a tier 6 game, the Jumbo is an amazing hull down machine regardless of which turret you use. The first turret in a tier 6 game is basically impregnable, almost. The second turret is a bit weaker, but people are still going to, I mean, even though this isn't the first turret anymore, the edge of the gun mantle still has an equivalent thickness of over 250mm. In a tier 6 game, people are going to bounce on the gun mantle all day, and in a tier 6 game, the front of this turret is actually pretty damn bouncy. If you are in a tier 8 game, in my experience, people tend to go through your turret pretty much, or they go through you regardless of what turret you have. I mean, if you're only exposing your turret, you might be okay, but if you're exposing any of your hull, they'll just shoot you through that, and they don't care about an effective thickness of 130 or something, they'll just go straight through it. And so I have tended lately to favour the top turret because it gives you access to what is, in my opinion, a better gun. A quick note while we're here actually on angling of this thing. So obviously if you angle it, you're going to get even more armour out of it. So straight on, the upper front plate has a thickness of about 130, 140, something like that. And the lower front plate is up to 180, which is ridiculous. Now let's put a bit of angling on it. Upper front plate just gone up to 155, lower, in some places we're over 200. But you have to be aware of the sides. The sides, okay, effective 218, we're still good. Angle it a bit more. Sides just came down to 169, 150, 241. So this, and actually I think in most of my games I've been under-angling this machine. I think I've been too paranoid about the sides. Ah, right. Okay. Something like this is actually a pretty good angle for this tank. No, too much. Something like that. So something like that. And it becomes very bouncy. The problem becomes the turret. If, you know, this side, suddenly it's 51, people can just shoot through the side of your turret. If you point the front of the turret at them, that's a lot harder to do, of course. So angle it something like that and you'll probably be fine. So the armour on this is actually pretty good. It's not impenetrable, but it's pretty good. One thing I would like to bring up right now, that machine gun port, not a weak spot. See? It's 102. That machine gun port is 102mm thick. So just before we have some games, a quick talk about the research you're going to need on this thing. So firstly, the grind to get to it. Well, there's no way around this. You go up the medium line, you're going to have to play the M3 Lee, which, I mean, the T1, you're going to have to play that anyway. T2 medium is alright, but you don't have to spend long there. M2 medium I personally didn't like, but again, you don't have to spend a huge amount of time there. M3 Lee, pretty much everyone hates the M3 Lee, and you're going to need 14,000 basically XP to get to the M4, and you're going to have to grind that out with the Lee, or free XP, I suppose. As for the M4 Sherman, at the time I must admit I didn't get on with it, but I think that was just because I was a bit naff at playing medium tanks at the time. That was some time ago, and so you're going to need 33 basically thousand experience to get the Sherman. Once you've got the Sherman, some of these modules are going to be unlocked. So, for instance, that engine is used on the Sherman. That engine is not, so you should have this engine unlocked, this radio unlocked, and you'll have these two guns unlocked. And you can fit all of this on the stock suspension. The stock suspension has quite a generous weight allowance. So just go ahead, fit the engine, fit the radio, fit whichever of the two guns you prefer. They're both valid choices. And go and have a few games. So where would I go after that? Well, the first thing I would do is try and unlock the top engine, because it's just, you know, that little bit extra grunt. In fact, it's quite a lot extra grunt. You go from 460 horsepower to 520, and the Jumbo can use all the grunt it can get. Next, I would actually unlock the suspension. Now, I can't remember if you can mount the top turret without the Suspension, yes you can, the top turret is lighter, and you can probably mount the top gun. In fact, you don't even need, in all likelihood, to get the suspension at all. So you could skip this. But I would get it, because it adds an extra couple of degrees to your traverse speed, and this is quite a ponderous machine anyway. And these two, the turret and the gun, or the top gun I should say, well, it's debatable whether you even need these or not to have a good time in it. You'll need the turret at least to move on to whether you want to go to the T29 or the T20, and I would advise unlocking this gun even if you don't use it, because it is used on both of these tanks, and it will make playing this more fun, I think. You might enjoy it. So, having rambled on long enough, let's have some games, shall we? So this is the first of the replays that I wanted to show you. Both of these games, if I forget to mention later on, both of them will be with the top turret, and well, the not the stock turret, and the M4A3E2 76mm gun, because that's my preferred layout. Now, I wanted to show you this game because, well, it shows how bouncy and resilient this tank can be, and indeed even the top turret can be, when top tier. Now I think, if memory serves, the top turret on this might even be the same as on the Easy 8. But as I say, I enjoyed it, I found it good fun. This was my preferred setup. So we've got an assault game on, name of the maps escape me, Sand River, that's the one. We're in an assault game, we're on the attacking team. And seeing as I have what is actually quite a decent turret, and I have good gun depression, I am going to go down and park in E0, because you can get a good hold down position there. There is one artillery piece, so I need to be a little bit careful, and it's a Hummel, so I need to be very careful, but it's still a strong position. If there were like 3 or 4 artillery pieces per side, that would be a dodgy position to take, but there aren't, there's one. So it should be fine with any luck. Now, what improvements does this gun give you over the stock one? Well, as I said, it's more accurate and has a faster rate of fire. That's it, but it actually makes quite a big difference. And so we are just gonna go here, park up, and boom, just show the top of our turret. Yes, there's a hatch they can shoot, but now, maybe I don't have any right to make some of the shots that I do against this Churchill, but I make them. And we're aiming, that one bounced, we're aiming for the turret of the Churchill, because the turret's like 83, 85 millimeters thick, something like that. And so we can go through it with ease, whereas the rest of his armour can be a bit of a nuisance. So we're just going to keep putting shots to the front of his turret, and he's going to keep bouncing on my turret until he eventually takes the hint and goes away with 17% of his health left. So that's tier 5 heavy reduced to 17% in not that much time. And you can see there, I think he was aiming for my commander's hatch actually, which is not a stupid idea. But, I mean, the Churchill's gun is not inaccurate, but at those ranges, good luck. Oh, hello Mr. M7, and he actually puts a shot through me. I suspect I'm angling too much against him, but I don't want to straighten the angle up to him, because I had that Chi-He over on the other side, and frankly neither of them have a particularly amazing gun. But, you know, there we go. They're both dead. And we're winning 6-2. This is good. And, ooh, there's that Churchill. Now I wonder, can we pick up... Oh, I whiffed that shot. Come on, reload. And this is the thing. Dead. This is the thing. With the M1A1 gun, it wouldn't have reloaded in time to kill that Churchill. It's little things like that that end up making quite a bit of difference. And, ooh, someone just put a shot through me. And, you know, it happens. You can't worry too much about it. Now, there's a douchebag wagon down there. Sorry, the DW2, and oh, good lord, there's a Chinu behind me. Okay, and they've damaged our gun. So, get the gun back. Going to ignore the DW2 behind me because, well, his gun sucks. Regardless of what gun he's using, it's bad. And my team will deal with him. He's a bottom tier In fact, how is he even in this match? A DW2 doesn't get into tier 6 games. Oh, he's platooned with a Chihi. Tier 4 medium, Japanese, which does get into Tier 6 games. Well, maybe he didn't know he'd get into Tier 6 games, maybe he decided to take the risk. Either way, fine by me. So we currently have 2 kills, and oh, hello. Remember me, Mr. Chinu. Now I'm just going to make sure the front of our armour is actually pointing at him, because I think he put a shot into our tracks, actually. But the Chinu, if he's got the top gun, it's not a bad gun on a Tier 5 machine. The fact that it's only actually a Tier 5, the gun itself is only Tier 5, but I can't find a Tier 5 75mm gun that's better, and you see, he put a shot straight through me. And I think I'm just auto-aiming here because I was moving, and boom, he's dead. And bang, there goes artillery. Ouch! Well, there's only 3 of them left. Soon only going to be 2 of them left. There's that KV-1S. Oh no, the KV-1S killed our KV-1. Cheeky little sod. Anyway, I just say in chat, I'm gonna get you, Armour. Oh, he's fired. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. And you can see that even though we've got the less sturdy turret, we've bounced a load of shots, we've taken one hell of a beating. And you can see that this thing really does play more like a heavy tank, really, than a medium. With the possible exception of the gun, which is very definitely not a heavy tank gun. And that's where you can sometimes come unstuck. And there he is, there's artillery, 1 shot. Oh, he hits us again, 2 shots, and he's gonna die. 3 shots, he's dead, and that's it. We finish on 54 health. We get quite a lot of potential damage received and a steel wall out of that. And that's with the upgraded turret, which armour-wise is weaker than the stock turret. So the choice is yours. Go for whatever you want. So that's the first replay. The second replay is going to be somewhat different. So this is the second game I was going to show you, and I'm going to show you this because it's a very different matchmaker, you're bottom tier. And you might think that with the ponderous nature of this tank and the nature of the gun, that it would struggle when it's bottom tier. And to a certain extent, in fact to quite a large degree, you would be right. However, that doesn't mean that you can't do anything. Let's go. As I'm going to demonstrate here. And because you're mainly shooting higher tier opponents, it's always worth remembering that you get an experience buff for doing so, and you get an experience nerf for shooting lower tier opponents. So you don't actually have to do, if you're shooting tier 8 say, you don't actually have to do that much damage to them to do reasonably well on the experience scale. And initially I'm just going to go over here because these dunes are quite good for a tank with good gun depression, and we have reasonable gun depression. It's an American tank, this should come as no great surprise to anyone. But one thing you really do have to bear in mind in games like this is that apart from, unless you're fighting a tier 6 in this game, or apart from kind of miracle bounces or lucky bounces due to extreme angles, your armour isn't worth a great deal of much. And that's one of the main reasons why I think the Easy 8 is better. I think it copes better when it's bottom tier. Now, someone in chat is asking what's better, the IS-3 or the FCM 50 ton, and I think they're asking it because they're the 2 top tanks, if you will, on each team. But it's not really a fair question to ask because the FCM is a premium tank, and as a general rule, a premium tank should be better than a stock tank of the same tier, but not as good as a fully upgraded tank of the same tier. So if our IS-3 is fully upgraded, it should be the better tank. It's also, of course, going to come down to the driver. Let's not forget that. I should actually have mentioned this is of course an assault game. We're back on the same map, Sand River, same map that we were in the previous game, but this time we're defending rather than attacking. And of course, a lot of people turn assault off, and I can see why, but I choose not to. I have all the game modes on. It does mean I tend to play certain maps quite a lot, so I spend a lot of my time on Erlenberg and the Siegfried line, I must admit. Anyway, we've already lost 2 tanks, one of which is top tier. T-34, oh dear, never mind. Now one thing that's worth remembering, of course, is that on an assault game, the attacking team have to either wipe you out or capture your base. All you have to do is defend your base or survive. And their 88 is whinging about credit card players. I assume he's referring to their FCM 50 ton perhaps not being very good. I don't know. And you do sometimes get this. People will go out, buy say a tier 8 premium tank for 35 quid. They're not cheap, 40, 50 euros, however much it is. But because they don't really have much experience of the game, they'll get in it, they'll drive it, and they'll suck in it. If you want to be good in a machine, or if you want to be good at this game, you want experience at being good in this game, just going and driving, or going and buying a premium tank is no substitute. Because you'll be playing against people, some of whom are quite good at the game, at the very least have some experience at playing with it. Now when I was shooting that Cheetah, the armour on it's garbage, but there is a bit of armour around the gun, so I was trying to avoid hitting the gun and just hit him through the side of the turret, and I managed to do it and take him out. And as you can see, we're 5 tanks down. We're losing 2-7, and the KV2 starts whinging about the team, and alright, I don't like bad-mouthing your team or any other team, but it's not looking good, is it? And to be fair, of the tanks that have died, it's mainly our bottom tiers, our tier 6s. We have lost a T20, tier 7, and we've lost that T34 right at the beginning, which is a tier 8. They're kind of bummers, but the tier 6s, not so worried about. Having said that, 2 KVS, KV1Ss, a KV2 and a T150, all of them have the guns to do well in this game. And if the VK player has, one of the top guns and he knows what he's doing, he's also stood a reasonable chance. But, them's the breaks. We are helped a little bit by the enemy there. Their 88 kills their own KV1S, so thank you very much for that. And again, over here we're going to try and use our gun depression once more to have a little look and see if we can get some shots on this dude. It's an ARL, and I think that shot took his tracks out. And so we're just going to sit here and we're going to pummel him. And he's dead. And that's kill number 2. Now, these are only tier 6 kills. They're low tier kills. Whoa, I take a hit from a KV2 there. But it looks like the KV2 isn't using the howitzer. If he was, I'd have expected it to do damage regardless of whether it penned or not. Maybe he's using the long 107. Anyway, sorry. But yeah, when you're bottom tier in a game, you're basically trying to do what you can and take advantages of opportunities that present themselves. And sometimes you're going to do nothing and you're going to come away with a rubbish experience score. Let's just accept that now. But other times you can do really well, and I've got some videos uploaded and some that are going to be uploaded showing just that. So don't give up just because you're bottom tier. Anyway, this should be about the Jumbo. But I've already talked a lot about the Jumbo, and the main thing going for the Jumbo, the armour, is really not what you're using in a game like this. You use that in a tier 6 and to a lesser extent a tier 7 game, but in a tier 8 game, things are really looking decidedly dodgy. But I decided to come over here to try and help out. Lend what firepower I can to things. And I have a look over there, and I can't remember if it's now or in a moment. I think there's a Type 58 over there. And I find a Type 59, which is not what I was expecting. Type 59 is the Chinese tier 8 premium medium tank. The one that you can't buy anymore, because it's really good. That's the thing, the Type 59 really is a bit too good. And it gets preferential matchmaking, and I've no idea why. But there we go, them's the breaks. Oh, and this IS-3 is going to go forward, and I tell him to stay back because he's just going to die. We're defending. When you're defending, there is no need, it depends on the map, but there's no need to just run straight off into the midst of the enemy. We just need to hold, to survive, and to hold the base for 3 minutes now. That's all we need to do. So, pop my nose over this ridge, see if I can get a shot on anyone, but no, that guy's too low down in the valley, but oh, hello, can I get a shot on this guy? No, my gun depression, while good, isn't quite that good. I have to come up over the rise, oh, he disappears. What about this chap? That's an ATA, oh, we'll get a shot through his commander's tower. That really is a big weak spot. And someone else finishes him off. And, oh dear, there's that Type 59, and doesn't matter what ammo I load, I can't take a Type 59 from the front. And this is one thing that's also worth bearing in mind. Even if you load gold ammo, APCR or heat or whatever, in most cases, if you shoot at the wrong, well, in all cases, if you shoot at the wrong spots, you're still going to bounce. So it's not kind of a complete I win button. And oh, it's the side of a Ferdinand. Oh, I'm off that shot, but we will have this. Whee! Excellent. And he just doesn't move. So we'll just keep pasting him. Now I make a bit of a mistake here, I think. Keep going, yep. I'm worried about that Type 59 behind me killing the IS-3. So I have another shot or two. Maybe another one, can't remember. But I figure this guy's probably moved by now. I mean, he can't just be sitting there being pummeled by my shots, can he? Surely, that'd be weird. And I try and go back and help this IS-3. But he's still there. And if I'd have kept firing, I'd have probably killed him eventually. I think I put 7 penetrating hits into him, and oh, there we go. There's the Ferdy. He takes out my engine. He takes out my track. Oh, that shot misses me. I take a bounce there, I don't know what from. And I try to use this dune to cover me from the Ferdinand. And yes, I know I'm pointing my backside towards him, but that's because I'm trying to move away. And I don't want to turn my side on because my armour's very unlikely to bounce him regardless of whether it's front or rear or side facing him, but my side armour gives him a larger target to hit. So I'm just showing him my arse at the moment. The IS-3 died anyway. Oh, I go side on, I have a look at this Type 59, and there we go. The Ferdinand gets me. Now, this is looking bad, isn't it? There's just the Su-100 left, but there's also only 15 seconds left. They need to kill this Su-100, they don't have time to cap. He needs to die. Oh dear, he's on 55%, 7 seconds. Come on, Su-100, come on. If he wins this, he gets a Kolobanov's medal. Game over, we win. And he gets one of the easiest Kolobanov's medals I've ever seen. For those that don't know, Kolobanov's is an epic achievement for being outnumbered by at least 5-1 and still winning, which is what he just did. So anyway, that was the Jumbo in a bottom tier, in a tier 8 game. And because we put quite a lot of damage onto that Ferdinand, I think we ended up doing him like 800 damage, something like that. He has about 1200 health. We ended up shaving off about 2/3 of his health. We actually get a good experience score out of that, and we win. So, that's game number 2. Okay, so, to summarise, what do I think of this machine and do I think you should get it? Well, it's difficult. Personally, I don't actually really like it. I know a lot of people do, but I don't. The problem is, it has the mobility of a heavy tank. You know, not a massively slow heavy tank, but a heavy tank nonetheless. So flanking opportunities with this machine are difficult, which means a lot of the time you have to take people on from the front, and the gun selection isn't really up to it. You're okay in a tier 6 game. In a tier 7 game you're starting to look a bit ropey, and in a tier 8 game it can be painful. You have to be opportunistic. And I think that the Easy 8, and I really liked the Easy 8, just for the record, I think the Easy 8 gives you better flexibility than this does. But your mileage may differ. Now, the worst thing I think about this tank is that it's almost useless, pointless. Let me explain what I mean. And to explain what I mean, let's have a look at the tech tree. So, imagine you are thinking about purchasing this tank. Why are you going to be doing it? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, you've just ground through the M4 Sherman, and you want to know which medium tank to use for the rest of the American medium tank line. If this is the case, what you have to bear in mind is that from tier 7 upwards, the playstyle is much more like the Easy 8 than it is the Jumbo. Armour is not the thing in for most of these tanks, with the possible exception to a certain extent of the purging. These are not really about armour. They're about reasonable mobility, reasonable firepower, being an all-round good medium tank. And that's more like the Easy 8 than it is like the Jumbo. So the Easy 8 prepares you better for the rest of the medium line. Okay, scenario 2. You're grinding up here and you have decided that you want to flip down into the heavy line from the M4. Maybe you did it because you originally were thinking of grinding down the heavy line, but you ground out the Sherman and you changed your mind, you want to go down into the heavies, or maybe you intentionally wanted to skip the T1 and the M6. So you decided to do that. Well, I don't really think this is a particularly good idea either. Because, well, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, despite what a lot of people think, the T1 and the M6, and in my opinion in particular the T1, but that's my own bias, the T1 and the M6 are not bad tanks. They're actually pretty good. And so I don't really see a massive benefit in skipping them. They're quite good fun. And so I don't see why you would play the Jumbo just to skip these two actually quite good machines. In fact, the Jumbo has really better armour than the M6, but the M6 gets better guns than the Jumbo. Take your choice. But I don't see any particular reason to skip these two. And going through these two actually gives you an advantage. So when you get to the T29 at tier 7, if you have gone through the M6, let's start with the Jumbo. If you've gone through the Jumbo, you will have this gun, the 76mm M1A2. You will not have this gun, the 90mm M3. So you will have to grind out this gun, which is 14,000 XP. And so you will have to play a tier 7 heavy tank, and not a very fast tier 7 heavy tank, especially not stock, with a 76mm gun that has 128mm of penetration. Yeah, sure, it's got a high rate of fire, that just means you get to bounce a lot. In fact, it has a lower rate of fire than the same gun on the Jumbo. Just think about that for a moment. And anemic damage. Do you really want to do that? And you have to use that gun to, at the very least, grind out the 14,000 XP for the 90mm gun. Alternatively, if you go by the M6, you can skip after the M1A2, skip straight to the T29. But if you do that, you deserve everything that you get because you're an idiot. Because this 90mm gun makes the M6. Without it, the M6 is bleh. But with it, the M6 is not bad. And some people really like it. So I think you want to grind out this gun, and it means you get to grind out that 14,000 experience a tier lower, making it less painful. Don't be in a hurry to rush through this, so you get a better gun when you play the T29. So it makes driving the T29, when it's stock, quote unquote, it makes driving it a much more pleasant experience. So I don't really think that's a valid option, or a valid reason. The only reason I can see... option number 3. You're buying the Jumbo because you like the playstyle of the Jumbo. You want that sort of reasonably heavily armoured but quite mobile machine that And the Jumbo seems to fit the bill. It does. But do you know what else fits the bill at the same tier? The ARL 44. The ARL 44 has better hull armour. The turret, it's a bit dodgy, but it has better hull armour. It still has good gun depression. And if you go for the ARL, well, you get better gun selection. And it's still mobile. So, and it gets more health. So in my opinion, if you want to play something with a similar playstyle to the Jumbo, but a bit better, go and play the ARL 44. The ARL stays much more competitive in higher tier games as well. So, I'm not really sure that's a valid reason, or a reason to play the Jumbo. The only reason I can see to play the Jumbo is that you have decided to grind down the medium line and the Americans, and then at some time later you've decided, you know what, actually I want to play the heavy tanks, and you can't bring yourself to rebuy the M3 Lee, because you won't have kept it because it's awful, and use it to grind out another 14,000 XP for the T1 Heavy. And that point of view I can kind of sympathise with, but I would personally argue you are better off grinding out that 14,000 XP on the M3 Lee than you are grinding the 14,000 XP required for the 90mm gun on the T29, because I haven't done it, but I imagine that's going to be a really painful experience. So yeah, my thoughts on this: it's not a bad machine. It's not a bad machine at all. It's actually a reasonably good machine. But for my money, the Easy 8 is better, different, but better. And this thing is kind of almost pointless. And I only have it so that I have a tier 6 to grind out the XP for an event on the EU server to get an IS-6. I'm not going to keep this. I'm going to sell it eventually. And this crew is actually going to jump into, when I do it, it's going to jump into the American autoloader line. Because they're already a medium crew trained up with decent skill set. That's my 2 cents. Your mileage might differ, and if it does, fair enough. If you enjoy the Jumbo, then enjoy the Jumbo. No reason to go and play something else. But I would say if you enjoy the Jumbo, you might also enjoy the ARL. Anyway. I've waffled on for far too long. I hope you didn't find my musings too frustrating, and please feel free to catch one of my other videos. Goodbye.